Good day, everyone. It's Lupo here once again. We are here today to discuss briefly the research or data collection instrument, meaning which the necessary tool that we use for collecting primary data. So one might ask, what is the research instrument? It is a tool that is used to collect or gather the data from research participants or respondents in simple terms. So there are various definitions that various authors bring on the issue of data collection and instrument. But at the end of the day, they all speak to one thing, which is the instrument for collecting the data. If you want to read more or further about the research instrument definitions, you can read Kabir 2016. There are various authors. I've just chosen Kabir because I could identify with some of his line of thinking. But you are not limited to that. I'm just highlighting him as we're going to use some of his writings as an example in this particular video. So, there are various research instruments that are available out there for collecting data, such as the interview guide, the questionnaire, the survey, and so forth. But today we're just going to focus on two commonly used research instruments, or the most used research instruments in a qualitative and quantitative research. So we've got the interview guide and the questionnaire. We will try briefly to distinguish between the two and provide examples where necessary in this particular video. Firstly, what is an interview guide and what is a questionnaire? And once you come across the word interview guide, it must be a qualitative study. So, an interview guide is a research instrument that is used in a qualitative study. That should be your starting point of what is the research, what is an interview guide. So, what must come into mind? You should underline that it is an instrument used in a qualitative study. If you decide or your supervisor advises you that your topic is qualitative in nature, you must understand that for the data collection process, you are going to use an interview guide. Having said that, an interview guide is divided into three categories. Into three categories. So they are not the same. It is not a one size fits all. So you must not just take it for granted that when you are told by your supervisor that your study is qualitative in nature, and then you assume that I'm just going to use an interview guide. You need to be specific when you are writing your study. You need to be very specific on type of an interview guide, which type of interview guide you are going to use. We have got a semi-structured interview guide. We've got a structured interview. We've got unstructured interview. What is a semi-structured interview? A semi-structured interview is a research instrument that uses both open-ended questions and closed-ended questions. Open-ended and closed-ended questions. But the number of closed-ended questions is limited. So here you are using both open-ended questions and closed-ended questions. Now you're asking yourself, what are open-ended questions and what are closed-ended questions in research? We are trying to simplify certain things here, that certain factors that when are given to you as a student, you tend to struggle to understand them and you are struggling to differentiate between the two. Okay, let us go back a little bit so that When I use certain words, I don't use them interchangeably because certain words in research are for a quantitative research methodology and certain terminologies are used in a qualitative study. Firstly, I said if you are conducting a qualitative study, the data collection instrument that you're going to use is what? Is an interview guide. Am I making myself clear? Thank you very much. So it means that if you are then conducting a quantitative study, a, qua, a, quantita, a quantitative study, you will be using a questionnaire. Now, in my explanation of these two types of research instruments, I'll be using certain words such as participants and respondents. Therefore, if you are doing you're conducting a qualitative study, the sample, the population from whom the data will be collected is referred to in a qualitative study as participants. They participate in the study. They are part of the study. And then the population from whom the data will be collected from in a quantitative study is referred to as respondents. Respondents. Why is that? It's because they are responding to a set of questions. I wish you understand that. Because there is a, a, a common mistake that is made by many students when conducting their study. They are using these words interchangeably, respondents and participants. Participants goes with a qualitative study. When you are conducting your interviews, they participate in the study. Your population participate in the study. You understand? Hence, you are conducting in the interviews. But now, if it's a questionnaire which is used in a quantitative study, the population is referred to as respondents. Why is that? They are responding to a set of questions. If you want to read more about the definition, the advantages and the disadvantages of using a questionnaire, please read Pedi and Pedi 2015. They explain explicitly on what is the questionnaire and what are the advantages and disadvantages of a questionnaire. Okay, now we are saying a questionnaire is an instrument that uses close-ended questions. Close-ended questions are the set of questions that have predetermined answers, such as predetermined answer will be, for example, yes or no, true or false, agree or disagree. You see? Those are predetermined answers. So when the respondent is responding to a set of questions in here, they've got answers already that have been prepared for them. So the questions here are structured in nature. Are what? They are structured in structured in nature. It is the opposite on this side. However, if you are conducting a qualitative study and you are using a semi-structured interview, it means you've got two sets of questions. You've got structured and unstructured questions. What are structured questions? As we have explained on this side of a questionnaire, that those are the type of questions that got predetermined answers. Then what are the open-ended questions? Are the kind of questions that allows the participants to express themselves. An interview guide is mostly used when trying to collect sensitive information. That is a very clear example where the participants will be given an opportunity to elaborate on a given answer and explains themselves freely instead. So, a good example of a semi-structured interview is when For example, if you are constructing your data collection instrument, which you must submit with your proposal, which is the draft, and it must be within your ethical clearance so that your ethical committee understands very well what type of questions you will be asking. So it must be attached there so that you do not violate ethical considerations of the research. So, if, for example, you are conducting a qualitative study, one of the most and commonly used instrument is a semi-structured interview guide. Why is that? Remember, primary data by its nature is time consuming and is expensive. You understand? So, if you are conducting a study, you are trying to minimize certain risk and try to use your resources effectively. So, if we are saying you're conducting a qualitative study, the mostly used research instrument will be the semi-structured interview guide, which is the combination of both structured and unstructured questions, closed and open-ended questions. For example, if you are designing an interview guide that is semi-structured, your section A, remember, an interview guide is divided according to sections. Those sections are your objectives of your study. Let's say your section A are the demographic profile of the participants. That section could be structured where you discuss the gender, the age, the level of qualification, and length of service, and so forth, etc. Those questions could be structured. Then section B, which will be your objective one, could contain a set of questions that are open-ended. That by in its nature, you are saving time. It is cost effective. And whereas the structured interview guide, it also has limited number of open-ended questions. Hence, it's referred to as structured interview guide. It's got a limited number of open-ended questions. And then the majority of the questions will obviously be close-ended. But the limited number of all open-ended questions. Here on the unstructured interview guide, all questions are open-ended. This one is time consuming and it's very expensive. Hence, I'm saying before you embark on the study, you need to first understand the data collection instruments that are used in the type of study that you are about to embark on. On this side, on a qualitative study, you are also able to use a survey. We will discuss a survey at a later stage. Now, the question might be from your side, how do you then administer these two types of instruments? Because our focus for today is on these two research instruments. How do you administer them? The administration of these two instruments is quite similar. Both instruments can be used when you are doing face to face. You can collect a questionnaire through face to face consultation with your respondents or participants, where you sit, you ask questions and tick where the answer is given, or you sit, you ask questions when you're doing a face to face and record the information. Then at the later stage, you must transcribe and code that data if it's qualitative. And then if it's a questionnaire, it's quantitative, obviously you need to clean your data. Then you can do telephonic interviews. You can collect your questionnaire telephonically. You can do online. Same applies this side. One might ask themselves, how do then I collect data from the participants that I'm not familiar with using a questionnaire? A questionnaire can be easily distributed using a link. I'm here to assist you on how to administer and to understand the difference between these two types of research instruments. You design, for example, a Google form, you develop a link, you share that link to your target population, which is your sample in this particular instance. You share it using online platforms. You can email it to them, send them through DMs on social media, and any other form of which you will be able to send that link. But for interviews, For online interviews, you need to what? Invite your participants so that they can avail themselves, and then you start interviewing them and record the information for the purpose of transcribing and analyzing that data. Let me not confuse you much about these issues, but if there is anything you do not understand concerning these two types of research instruments, you can go and read Kabir 2016 and Pedi 2015. They will explain to you on how these two instruments differ from each other and where are they applicable. Remember, just to remind you, if you are conducting a qualitative study, your research instrument will be interview guide. There are various types of interviews you can do depending on your topic. If you are doing a quantitative study, your research instrument in this instance will be a questionnaire. So do not mix the two. And the population for your study, it's referred to as respondents if it's a quantitative study. But if it's a qualitative study, the population is referred to as participants. We've got a semi-structured interview, structured interview, and unstructured interview. Kabir 2016 explains that explicitly for you to understand. I was trying just to explain these terms in a layman's term so that everyone could have an overview of what we are talking about. So send me a message on any of these instruments that you are struggling with. I will make another recording of or anything that you seem to be struggling with in your research. Send us a direct message. We will be happy to explain some of these issues to you. Thank you. See you next time. Ayeko Wi-Fi network. I better not stop. Oh, ayeko kodwa into endizoyenza it use